So as most of us know, My Hero is in its final act right now, and it's really anybody's guess when it's going to end exactly. But recently in volume 32, Horikoshi actually gave us an update on the final act, and he said, I originally planned it to last 5 volumes, but now I'm not so sure anymore. What will happen to Deku in the end? What even is the greatest hero? Will Michiko Genriki appear in the story? If you're curious about this character, he's like some kind of fashion designer or something who maybe appeared in volume 19. It's not really important, or maybe it is. I want to make all the people who have read this series until now feel rewarded. We'll meet again in the next volume, plus Ultra. And if you've been following my channel, you know that I've been speculating about the ending of this series for a while now. And I thought, instead of me just making another video about what I thought was going to happen at the end, let me ask other creators what they think. So I asked 8 other anime creators their thoughts on the ending of My Hero, and we're going to be taking a look at all of them, and I'll give my thoughts on them, and I guess we'll see what kind of conclusion we come to at the end with everything we've went over here. So Anime Augie said, I think when it comes to talking about endings, it could lead to a variety of things, but in this case, since we know that by the end of the series that Deku will become the #1 pro hero, I think that it's possible within the last 10 chapters to see that in action. But I feel like the reality of everything could go as it does in most My Hero arcs, with things ending off in a bang. By this time, I think we could be seeing the final fight between both Deku and Shigaraki taking place with the whole world on the line. With how Shigaraki is right now, there's no doubt in my mind by the end game he will be able to decimate the planet at will. However, I feel like we aren't going to see obviously the death of Shigaraki with how Deku is as a character, but the defeat of Shigaraki will most likely lead to the restoration of Hero Society, bringing the faith of heroes back to the people of Japan and maybe even the world, deeming Deku as the protector of the world and better known as the greatest hero of all time. So as you're going to see throughout the video, a lot of people kind of have more or less the same foundation for what's going to happen at the end, and that is essentially Deku versus Shigaraki, winner takes all. Because on the surface, that's essentially how Horikoshi has been setting it up, right? And that's basically the crux of everything, I suppose. It's how that battle is going to resolve itself. And honestly, it's kind of hard to predict what is going to happen. I mean, outside of the obvious ending, but I'm talking about how we're going to get to that point. Like, what is exactly going to happen between Deku and Shigaraki? So Anime Uproar said, the final showdown will be at UA. All that info we got about the new security system was a Chekhov's gun, so we will get to see it tested at some point in the future. I predict that the UA traitor will finally be revealed as he or she helps the villains infiltrate UA in some capacity. All Might will die in the final battle, but Deku and most of the students will survive. There will be a big confrontation between Deku and Shigaraki, but at some point before that, Shigaraki will kill All For One. Deku will find himself in a situation where he has to choose whether to kill or spare Shigaraki. Knowing Deku, he will probably spare him, although the better ending would be Deku actually finishing him off for the greater good. I agree with that. But I also agree with what Anime Uproar said at the beginning here about the final showdown happening in UA and the security system being a Chekhov's gun. I absolutely think that is the case, because why else would all of that exposition be laid out there for it to not go anywhere significant? And the fact that it's so elaborate, and I guess the fact that maybe the typical reader would think that it's only for the benefit of UA, and also leads to what Anime Uproar said about the traitor being revealed at this point. If you've been following my channel, you know my thoughts on this. If not, check out this video here. But I pretty much agree with most of what Anime Uproar is saying here. But first, this video is sponsored by MechaJapan.com. MechaJapan is an online Japanese shop where you can find exclusive items as if you were like literally shopping in Akihabara. And they have like everything here, from Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, Digimon, My Hero Academia, Demon Slayer, Jujutsu Kaisen, One Piece, all the best series, all the best IPs, and everything to do with them. I mean, they've got clothes, bags, keychains, earrings, costumes, figures, plush, trading cards. They even have like bedroom, kitchen, and bathroom stuff too. Now, what I personally got from Mecha Japan was these 2 figures here. So I got this awesome, amazing Yamaguchi Deku figure, and I also got this huge Goldie Roger figure. Wow. Check that out. Pretty cool, right? So guys, please check out Metro Japan and use my code ZHNI5 and you'll get 5% off of your order. Thanks again. Dan Exclaims says, I'd have to put my thoughts together for that. I haven't really put my thinking cap on for it, but if I don't speculate that Koichi and Deku team up to take down All For One, my subscribers will probably burn down my bar. So in case you're unaware, Dan Exclaims is one of the most prolific vigilantes YouTuber, maybe the most. So he's kind of saying that like it's on brand for him to speculate that Koichi, the main character of Vigilantes, is going to team up with Deku at some point. And it certainly is possible that that could happen, but I think the odds are kind of slim because we haven't really had that much Vigilantes crossover. I mean, we've obviously had some of it, but it would be really surprising to me that if Koichi just shows up and he's like a big part of the ending of the series, I mean, I would be on board with it, but I just wouldn't get my hopes up. I think if anything, maybe Koichi will be shown, but what he does, I'm not really sure if it's going to be that big. So aside from YouTubers, I did ask one non-YouTuber here. I asked Hexa Mendel, who you're probably familiar with. He said a final battle of only the new generation having to step up and the big players having to deal with either Shigaraki or All For One, maybe his vestige. The All For One angle giving Deku the ability to save Shigaraki through death from All For One, to have his and Gran Torino's options come to light. The rest of the villains, depending on their case, could go to jail with quirk canceling. Others might go down during events leading up or during the finale. Time-wise, I don't think the series will be past the end of high school, since it hasn't had any large time skips up to the final act. Also, with how fast the villains are able to obtain power, it needs to be dealt with quickly. Afterwards, possibly a big time skip chapter or two when everything is peaceful. So I definitely agree with that. I don't think the series will be past the end of high school. I really doubt we'll see much of what's going to happen academic-wise. So I think it's likely that we might get that big time skip, which is just going to cram all of the future history of these students into like, I don't know, 10 pages or something. So Mangavation said, I don't know what will happen. What I will say is that it's possible that quirks will be no more at the end of My Hero. I think that's something that could happen within the final 10 chapters, and it revolves around Deku versus Shigaraki, possibly Garaki and All For One too, on what they think is the right thing to do. So I absolutely agree with this. And actually, not too many people talk about this aspect. And this leads into what my personal theory on the ending is. And it revolves around the quirk singularity, which is like a major aspect of the series that is kind of like under the surface this whole time and needs to be resolved before the series is over. So I definitely agree with this. And I think that there's a very good possibility that quirks will no longer be a thing at the end. So Plot Armor said, we expect My Hero to end with Shigaraki definitively surpassing his master All For One, Deku surpassing All Might, and our various heroes in training going on to surpass the heroic structure that predated them. Deku will ultimately be able to save Shigaraki as they're pretty much the same character led down two opposite paths. The powers of All For One and One For All are indeed stronger together, and they'll need that strength to combat whatever the real endgame is. Shigaraki at this point is publicly irredeemable, but at the very least, an ultimate sacrifice of some sort would allow him to die for the sake of heroism. Highly doubt he'll be incarcerated, highly doubt he'll be killed by Deku outright, so salvation is really the only reasonable conclusion, especially considering that the goal Deku expressed to the vestiges. And the fruition of this will be what truly makes him the greatest hero as opposed to simply having the greatest power. So I agree with some aspects of this for sure. And that is, I think All For One and One For All will eventually come together. And it's probably going to be through Izuku. And it goes back to what I was talking about previously with the quirk singularity and everything. It's possible that Izuku may need the full power of All For One and One For All fused together in order for him to stop the quirk singularity in some way, possibly. Or it's even possible that Shigaraki is the one that does this, which could lead to the salvation aspect of his potential character arc. Truth Hero said, I think broadly, One For All will come back in some way, and the final showdown will be between Team One For All / Shigaraki in Class 1A. I do see the possibility that Shigaraki could turn against All For One in the last moment and be a hero. Shoto will forgive Endeavor, but this may come at a cost, especially with Dabi. And then he says he actually hasn't read the most recent chapters. So like I said in the beginning, everyone essentially sees, Shigaraki versus Izuku, winner takes all at the end. But I like that Truth brings up Endeavor and Shoto here, because obviously that's the other big storyline outside of the main one. And I do think that Shoto will eventually forgive Endeavor for sure, but I think Endeavor might die too, unfortunately. And then lastly, we have Turtle Quirk here, and he says, I have a few ideas about the end, but I'll give you one of the more out there theories. Midoriya defeats Shigaraki, but doesn't kill him, and in the climax, Eri rewinds him back into Tenko. He then gets a second chance to live his life free from the influence of All For One. I guess that would mean that his memories would have to be rewound too, but Hori can make it work, so I absolutely agree with this too. I do think that there's a really good chance that Eri might straight up rewind Shigaraki back to a child, because we've seen that as a recurring thing building up to the final battle too, about how Tenko, not Shigaraki, is innocent, like he's a victim of circumstance, and that, before All For One came into his life, he was essentially going to live like a normal, quirkless life pretty much. And being that the majority of us consider him irredeemable for sure, it's not like Tomura Shigaraki can really do much to have a reasonable character arc, you know what I mean? At least one that would sit well with the consensus. So aside from him like sacrificing himself or something like that, I think another good possibility is Eri just rewinding him back to being Tenko before All For One found him, and then he just lives his life as little Tenko again. And if his memories are gone, that's probably for the best, to be honest. So that's pretty much it for the video today, guys. And I think you could probably take bits of what everyone said here and put them together, and you'll probably come up with more or less what the ending is actually going to be. But let me know what you think about the ending of My Hero in the comments, and who do you agree with the most that we went over in this video. And also, please check out their channels. I'll have them all listed in the description. And if you liked the video, please give it a like, and please subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day. See you in the next one.